everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We'll have Peter Frank start the conversation. He'll be mediating this conversation between all the artists. And then we'll have Snezhana help with the questions as well. Thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming again. And this exhibition is a curatorial feat, and equally the realization of all the individual artists in the show who have had a shared experience. The curator, Snezhana, has written, the title Zimmer Frei, or Zimmer Frei in German, is a German term for vacancy. It evokes childhood memories for her and many other Europeans as well, of summer travels with my parents through Italy, Yugoslavia, and Greece, where foreign tourists were welcomed to stay at private homes or B&Bs of that time. It was a time of progress, and foreigners were welcomed. Wonzimer Gallery's name means living room in German. The gallery has an entrance designed as a bookshelf portal. This entrance inspired Snezhana to propose a group exhibition to expand the site into a mind space, suggestive of a gateway, both nostalgic and being here now, to serve as a global convergence. That, in a nutshell, gives you the idea of the concept of the exhibition. The feel of the exhibition is as important as the concept, and in fact it's at the root of the concept, because this is an exhibition of transition, of roughness, of action and of incompletion, but especially of transition, because all these artists are here in Los Angeles, not just from other places, but from other places where other countries, other cultures, even other civilizations. And these artists have come here for various reasons. All have chosen to make art here, and all have found that the atmosphere for making art in Los Angeles has been salutary to their art-making impulse and their art-making goals. It was and then the curator Snezhana chose these artists to interrelate. There's so many more artists who fit the definition of emigres, wanderers, visitors, permanent visitors to Los Angeles, to America. But these are the artists that fit Snezhana's sense of, you might say, the conceptual texture of the exhibition. Interestingly enough, and Snezhana and I have been talking about this, there are two other exhibitions along similar themes happening or about to happen in Los Angeles, in Southern California. I was out at Camarillo last week for the opening of the show Disconnected, thank you. The theme, displacement, is the theme there and here, but it's a different experience aesthetically. And perhaps we'll be able to discuss how it is. Arzu Bartania also participated in that show. And another artist in this show, Ariola Davis Ayaloja, is participating in the other show that's coming up at the 18th Street Art Center in Santa Monica later this month. I forget the name. Do you remember the name of the exhibition?
No, it's Amanda. Amanda Maciel Antunes is participating.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not.
I don't remember the exact title of the exhibition.
Okay.
It's about the domesticity and homemaking of women artists that are immigrant. So I know that's the story, the narrative behind it.
Right, and I should mention that the show out at Camarillo at the Studio Channel Islands is also all women. And so of the 3 shows, this is the only show that includes men as well. Which somehow doesn't, if it matters much at all, it points to the fact that I think we perceive women as women artists, that we perceive them as, how best to say it, particularly sensitive to this matter of displacement, personal, familial, cultural, social, that the stories told from those points of view go deeper into the areas where the aesthetic and the social meet and blur the lines. I think a majority of the artists in this show are women too, aren't they?
Well, the larger majority, but how many of us? 7, right?
Yeah.
Out of 13. Unfortunately, some of artists are out of the state, some have got sick. So these are the artists here that you see, minus that one, but she's welcome to join us in the future.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so do you guys want to just introduce yourself just by names?
Yes, please.
People.
Hi guys, I'm Katya Uzvitsky. I did the soft sculpture that's hanging over the pedestal.
Hi, I'm Arzu Bartania, and my piece is time lapse, and the one it's paper hung from the ceiling, so it's fabric, the blue, dark blue fabric with the paper.
I'm Max Presnell, and mine is a pink painting and a sculpture based around a wheel.
I would like to add something to this conversation, which is, where are you from?
Oh,
Can we just do that
and
again?
I'm from Belarus. Do you want me to do the whole thing?
The dance and singing? No.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
location.
Okay, I'm from Iran.
I'm from London.
Where?
London?
Guys, we need to compete with Peter because he has a mic, so he has a superior voice over ours.
Yeah, I'm cheating.
As a art critic and curator that we're going to fight here. Just joking. So please project so everybody can hear.
Okay, well you're the next up.
Oh, I am, okay. I'm Snežana Petrovic, and I'm from Yugoslavia, and I choose to be from Yugoslavia even though that it does not exist, because this is where I came from, and that's how I identify myself.
Hello, I'm Alaya Parisi, and I have the purple painting in the exhibition there, and I made the sound installation. I'm from Switzerland.
Hi, my name is Chen Hong Chen. I make the piece, I crochet cable and wire together, those pieces. I don't think you can miss it. I'm from Taiwan.
Hi, I'm Carsten Bund. I painted, I made the self-painting picture.
You have to be louder.
I made the self-painting picture outside.
Where are you from?
I'm from Germany.
Okay.
Thank you, Max.
Okay, thank you all. Snežana, why these artists? But I asked that in relation to the question, why this topic?
Okay, that's a loaded question,
It's supposed to be.
but I'll try my best, and
Yeah.
I'll try my best to answer that. I know the work of these artists for a long period of time, and watching their growth and what they're doing. I might not know them in person, but when I decided to do this exhibition, I was really moved with the work that I've seen done by Alaya and two other artists that are different race, different gender, different continents. One artist is from Egypt with PhD and long history of teaching, who spent 8 years working in the liquor store in the barrio in San Bernardino, and then started teaching. So Alaya is amazing. He lived the art. He grew up with artists, and he's self-taught. And Adeola, who's from Nigeria, she is a teacher, and she's younger than Nader from Egypt. And all three pieces, that when you walk to the right, those are paintings that actually spoke to me about this fight to become something. Like it's about mark making, it's about the struggle. The paintings are not slick, what we expect in the commercial galleries. They're new humans coming out of it, and had this like really raw quality. And this is started me thinking about what is that make us human, and what is the connectedness or connection point between all of us, regardless where we come from. And so then I was looking at Max's paintings and thinking about the power of the mark making, and even though it's going towards abstraction, there are these anchors, points in time where the dialogues is happening, and there's like this forcefulness and fight that comes out of it, and its rawness. And this is how I started defining in my head these connections that Peter mentioned here, which is the raw quality of the work. That is not to say it's not refined in thinking or sophistication, but it represents for me the struggle of becoming and creating something that, regardless of the final result, you are pursuing it and you're making this mark and effort. And we almost like, well, it's difficult to say because there's so many different arts happening right now. But the times when the Koenig or this force that comes out of the artwork that's in mark making, it's layering in texture, and this quality that has energy and draws the attention was something that I was interested in. And looking at the artwork of other artists, how their progression or work was evolving, I found similar quality in addition to impermanence or ephemerality, which I thought it's a common denominator of all of us who actually left some stability and belief in something that we saw as stable grounds. So we just decide, for whatever reason, it does not matter. This is not, to me, it's not a story that is sad story. To me, it's a story of actually making an effort to pursue what you want to become. And your American dream, and each of us had like different American dreams, and we had these conversations, and why did we choose to come here? And maybe artists can actually share their American dream after this. But to me, the idea was like, let's create a community of artists that are invisible, because we are loners, each of us comes from somewhere. Well, Meg still have his like little niche of the British artist, but the secret society, it's not really publicized. But we don't have that kind of rapport, we don't have voice, we are not really visible. And I was choosing the artists that actually came from different continents, and finding from each of them that they're all searching for what is that we have in common with each other, and where is that point where we connect. And that's what the work is about largely. And so that is how my curatorial approach started, from looking and not saying, like, there's so many more interesting artists that are immigrants. And this is just like not even like the scratching the iceberg. It's just like this little like few snowflakes here and there. But I feel that we, by working on this show together and having conversations, we touch upon many subjects: identity, where it come from, all of these, the process of art making, what is that we choose to work with, and why, which ended up, as Peter was saying, it's quite raw, but that was intended, and to speak our stories, and not to be like some, you know, kumbaya, happy occasion where we're holding hands and singing that, but really building a community and dialogue of artists. So for me, at the opening night, how huge the reception was and what kind of conversations were happening, and that artists would come to me and say, I feel like I'm at home. This was like the greatest gratifying moment that I had, because it was about that connection that we felt, and we felt it's a safe place to be. Him and me, Alaya and I, talk about how we want to create a sense of space and connection within the space. And we talk about the sound that can, soundscape that can bring people together. Something that's not intrusive, that has the rhythm of the heartbeat, or the water that's just flowing and flowing. And so that was another layer of bringing all the artists and artwork together, creating a home. And why don't you talk about it, what we did?
So I think we've worked together on the sound installation and kind of putting ideas back and forth, but I went into sample not only instrumentation but also vocal samples from all the cultures that are in the exhibition, and found those different language hymns or lullabies, things like that, that are very soft, but from each of these countries. And then I also put this phrase, who am I, into Google Translate for each of the languages, and put them into different songs so it plays from different directions, and put effects on it also to kind of blend it into one thing, so it doesn't sound separate, but everybody, like there is a Chinese hymn that goes with a German hymn, but because it's not really understandable, it just sounds kind of alien or weird. And that's also actually coming from that. It is actually a term for immigrants, alien. So it is a interesting concept in that way too. And I think just making it all come together and proving a point that we all are human, and there's just the slight difference of different languages and maybe different looks or something, but at the end of the day we're all making art, and that's what is beautiful.
But you're not assimilating. You're not our several generations ago, the emigres who were coming to America would try to divest themselves as best they could of their background. They would try to melt into the melting pot of America. But since the 1960s, that pattern has not been the major pattern that immigrants follow. There is still a self-consciousness about that kind of identity, and you probably historically find that artist immigrants are the ones who assimilate the least, who stand out, who exploit rather than hide their different identity. And we've now created a United States where, despite the protests of some, the people who are different are the people who are recognized as constituting the fertile culture of our country, the culture that's going to determine our future. America's future was never anything without emigres. And now, emigres are forcing that point home, especially as artists. But to return to another theme you were talking about, we were talking about, that is the rawness of this exhibition. It contrasts, as I indicated before, with the relatively elegant installation in Camarillo at the studio Channel Islands. This is one big space filled up with very active, very almost choreographed, raw presences. In Camarillo, the exhibition is elegant, discreet, and the works of the artists, even though there are several by each artist in that case, very poised and self-possessed. This is not a criticism of either that approach or this. Those are curatorial decisions, and they serve to bring out different aspects of what artists in general, and emigre artists in particular, are capable of achieving. So if you go to the Camarillo, I'd like you to keep that in mind, that what you're seeing is not a better show or a worse show, but a different type of show making effectively the same statement.
Arizo.
Arizo is, as I mentioned before, the one artist who was in both that show and this. And I was wondering if you'd like to say a few words about your experience of that show and this being in it. I have an experience of it, but I'm in neither show.
Yeah. As you mentioned, that one is all female artists, and this one is mixed. So maybe that's the difference somehow. And I would say, as again, you said it all, but this one, the usage of the space, the whole gallery space, is totally different from that one. And one of the reasons might be because in Camarillo, most of the artists are painters, so they mostly, you can see works on the wall. But this one is more installation based. We have painting definitely, but it's more, the usage of the space is totally different from that one. And I think that one is softer than this one, or might be because it's all female, I don't know. But there's, like as Peter just said, definitely different experience between here and there. But none of them is like better, but it's really different. And yeah.
Great, thank you.
Sure. And even my work, even though I always do installation, on that space my installation is all on the wall, but this one is coming from the ceiling, so I can totally see the difference that way too.
I think it's one indication that Los Angeles itself is becoming more self-conscious and complex about being an international art center. It's the status of international art center is something Los Angeles has enjoyed for less than 30 years. And the presence of so many artists from elsewhere in the world in such an supposedly American city like Los Angeles is something remarkable. It's not remarkable that there are so many foreign artists in New York, but it is still remarkable that there are in Los Angeles, save for the fact that Los Angeles has always been something of a foreign place. It's from the United States point of view. After all, we belong to Mexico, and our culture has been Hispanic, and ultimately not Anglo-Saxon. Right from the beginning. So there's always been that presence, and of course, being on the Pacific coast, we've been facing Pacific Asia. So the presence of artists identified with China, with Japan, even Korea, is long-standing in Los Angeles and California in general. But at the same time, Los Angeles has striven to be part of the American art world, and until recently that meant assimilating your extra-cultural identities, not amplifying them. Well, art is a tool of amplification, not assimilation. And I think a show like this makes that clear.
Is it a moment that maybe we touch upon identity? Maybe Max wants to comment on that. we had great
Yes,
conversations.
I have an identity.
No, but seriously, it's a fluidity of identity.
We had those conversations, and the thing that I find interesting is that there is a difference between generations in the way that people think about this. Younger generations of Americans whose parents and grandparents, etc., from other cultures, have an idea of assimilating themselves into both, because they're Americans, but through their ancestors' cultures in a strange way that, I am my generation, I moved here by myself. So my culture isn't here, and I'm not trying to understand it in terms of parents and that kind of thing, which I think is different, not for us, but for a lot of people, because I think all of us actually came from another country, weren't born to parents from another country. And I think that means that there's a different way of thinking about how you think about what identity is, because the realization has to be that there's this hidden, coded history for anybody born in another country, which doesn't exist here. And so you're constantly somewhere in the gaps between understanding the amount of Americanisms you understand and the cultures, the background culture that you're from, which people aren't understanding. So you're somewhere in between, not quite being, relatively fluent in this, and fluent in this, but nobody understands this fully. Like, we speak English in here, most of us, but if I was here with a couple of people from London, I guarantee you wouldn't know what we were talking about. Just through slang and vernacular, and those kind of coded ways of speaking that one does when you're speaking to people from the same sort of areas, class systems, that kind of thing. And so I do think that it's interesting that there's, when talking about identity, I think for our generation, if you did move, it's a far less certain thing. It exists between things. It doesn't, I don't feel like that making artwork is an example of showing somebody anything. It's a set of questions that I don't ever get to the answers with. But the process of asking the questions through these codes, through these different backgrounds, some autobiographical, some cultural, American, English, different things that we're all part of subcultures. All those things go into this mix that it tries to hold itself together, never quite does. That rawness you were talking about is because these things don't come together, and they're never attempting to come together. There are sets of, even for myself, is understanding that they drown themselves in degrees of the unknown constantly, in terms of how much of that symbol. I'll give you an example because it's on that painting out there.
Great.
Used to be that was okay. And then there was a push by the right wing to say it was white supremacy, white power. Well, in my club, that means us. That's the symbol for our interracial club. And we've been around a lot longer than people doing white power, so we refuse to give it up. But that, just in a very quick, simple explanation, there's 3 very current uses of that hand signal that have absolutely completely different, 3 different completely different meanings, and they're partly, one's wider culture, and the other 2 are subcultures. And trying to put those together because we all exist in multiple subcultures.
This is not a pleasant sign in most cultures, but in Brazil, it is. It's called the figa. And also, this is a positive sign, and this isn't.
I get that all the time because in America you do this on the bike all the time. And if I was in England, somebody's going to wrap me around the head with something if I did it.
Well, you're on the wrong side of the street, for one thing.
That would help. That would help.
But that points at actually at a larger experience that we all have, whether we're emigres or not, and experiences with other cultures which are in fact fast metamorphosing, fast forming. Even as we learn about them, even as we watch them, even as we try to take them in. This is especially true since we all got home computers at home and had access to the world the way we never did before, but also the amount of travel that we're now able to do, as we couldn't 50 or 100 or even 100 years ago. That our experiences with different cultures, civilizations, languages, histories, and aesthetics is much broader than it used to be. In some ways, I've come to regard the current populist right movement, the alt-right, as a reaction against all of this. One final stand against having to swallow the world. They want to barf the world back up. Even in cultures that most encourage the maintenance of traditions and the of visual and technical traditions, expect some growth in those practices to lead elsewhere, so that the change may come once in 100 years, but it comes. And we have become more aware, just generally, the whole world has become more aware of how much is changing. The amount of change hasn't changed. Our awareness of it has. And that too is fed into this right-wing reaction, a literal reaction, reactionary position against change. It's bound to fail because that's not the way history works. These people aren't on the wrong side of history, they're on the back side of history.
But the change is the essence of life. I mean, you cannot stop change.
Finally.
So, regardless of our beliefs that we can control our lives or environment or whatever that is, that's great, but the change is happening regardless of what is that we believe, that we're in control of. But I like that you mentioned AI, because I think maybe Carson can comment on that, because his work is about AI. And I found like bringing technology into the artwork is rather difficult because it's new, people are not ready for that, very critical, they don't have a patience and so forth. But what do you think about having AI in your work? And just in general, because you're always like on this like forefront on what you're doing. Carson.
Well, let me just say about something about my identity too. I will. That's connected. So, I came here as a painter, but I did not make money, and I turned to be a programmer because that was the thing I made for money, and this reflects some of my changes. Yeah. So that I now have a self-painting painting is a direct reflection of what happened to me here, and it's culminated like over years and years, and now with AI it just found its form, yeah. And to me this is a new step, maybe like a new quantum leap, or like machining, like manufacturing was in the 1800s. We may not understand the full extent of this, and I don't know if I understand it at all, but I have been testing the new thing that everybody talks about, the ChatGPT, and I felt like he's already my friend, or it, I don't know, yeah? So I don't know, so it's mind-blowing. And no, I wrote a concept to this artwork. And the concept was only about a year old, and I said, I want to start working to transfer my own creativity to a bigger AI, and I want to start working on this before it's even there. And I'm going back to Asimov, the multivac computer that he described. And I said, yeah, multivac isn't there, but before I know it, it seems like it's already there. So we can ask this machine every question. And I tried it. I tried to repair a car. It knew the answer of which particular fuse is responsible for which particular part in the automobile, in which year. I can ask about cooking, I can ask about psychology, I can ask about everything. Yeah, it's mind-blowing, and that hasn't even entered my mind that this could happen in this time frame where I started working on using artificial intelligence. So now what has happened, and you probably all know some of the engines, they call it so-called engines, DALL-E or whatever is online, where you can create your images. You just give some instructions and bang, brand new images there. This wasn't even on my horizon when I started with this. So it has essentially like passed me now.
Can you explain your artwork too? Like how you did?
If that's
Yeah,
good.
Because it's a
needs
kind
explanation. Yeah.
So initially I was not aware that AI could create art, and but it became apparent that AI can not only recognize images, but it can also use that memory that is the artificial, the neural nets, the artificial memory, that it can be recalled. And that was a major point for me where I started to be interested. Artificial intelligence has always been used to detect images, like recognize people. You probably know from facial recognition. With your phone, it opens up when it sees your face. And like this type of thing. But the other way around I found really, really interesting, because now we can actually look into the memory of the machine. And that is the real question that I have. Like, what's going on in the memory of this machine? And that continues to be my question. Obviously, there's a long list of questions that this machine creates, because it creates per day maybe 50,000 pictures. so this is a single one only. Now, what if everybody does that, or if a large amount of artists do that, and it will be such an image flood that you ask, who needs that? Yeah, who wants to consume artificial memories or artificial anything, right? So I know the question is like, what is art, right? So is it communication? No, at that point, it may not even be communication. To who? Yeah, who's talking to who? A machine to a machine, or who's consuming this in the end? Yeah, so.
Is it a little bit like Blade Runner then? If the AI starts generating images for other AI, then that becomes a sense of identity and creativity. If it's doing it for each other, for instance, or for us.
It's a form of entertainment because these machines are triggering one another, and we are simply witnessing, having set them in motion. I mean, it's still garbage in, garbage out, but now the garbage goes through a much more complex, a much longer system of process.
At this time, we still are trained to be humans. So what we see from a machine, we will accept this as human because we project that. But there may be a new generation that doesn't have that and that doesn't care about that. So we care a lot about other humans, so we care what the machine says. We also care what the machines create. So I noticed that, for example, when you see something that has a lot of subjects or an interesting landscape or whatever, and you look at this and you think, wow, there's so much in this. This is a deep painting, and you hear that it's created by AI. Suddenly there is a different reception, but still, what happened inside you as a witness, as an audience, is still real. So, but that may change once we get used to that. So,
well, are you saying that we'll become better at distinguishing AI-generated imagery and material from human-generated imagery and material, or that it won't matter? You could say the same thing about AI until it's not true anymore. That AI material now is clean. There's no funk to it, and that will be the next challenge.
And this is like what I had in mind as I was working with all the artists and choosing the work. It's Joseph Beuys, whom I met when I was 16. It's his quote that I would like to share. And that is, humanity's capacity to gain knowledge is an exercise in spiritual growth through creative thought, which extends our sense of selfhood beyond the realm of the physical into the realm of the spiritual. So I just think what you're talking about, it goes beyond our capacity just to communicate or do the tasks. It goes into this like energy exchange and connection that is, so far it's difficult to imagine that it could happen with the computers because people are behind it. So what kind of people are behind it? They're creating whatever that they're creating.
Everybody's like point of view and perspective, I keep like turning it over and over in my mind. So the way that we came to the US, it actually, I think, I'm assuming that Max came as an adult. I came as an 11-year-old, you know, from Belarus right when communism was collapsing, and it was my family's, you know, it was like the typical American dream to move from like the Soviet regime and to shed like the oppression of the communist state and to come into, you know, to live in a free society. But so whether or not, I actually don't know that what that American dream idea is really kind of ephemeral and always evolving, and I don't know if my parents actually were able to achieve it. I think I'm the recipient of actually all of their struggle and labor. But what was the other question? Why Los Angeles? You know, I was living in New York for about 12, 13 years, you know, thinking like this is the epicenter of the art world and this is where I have to be, and slowly kind of realized that there's a big world out there actually outside of New York, and I was looking for a more welcoming and more giving art scene that I could be more active in as a, you know, a person who runs an artist run space, who's also like in collectives, and Los Angeles was kind of the perfect fit for that because the scene here is so much more open and giving. There was something else I wanted to mention, and it was kind of about, you know, the idea of when you're an immigrant and you know, the idea of assimilation and kind of like I guess I'll speak from my experience, how I've actually gone like in a circular way around it, where because I was so little, I was only in 5th grade, I really felt a lot of pressure to assimilate and to really blend in and to really embrace the culture. And it was easy for me too, because I was like a little sponge at that time. And then I think the result of that actually is that it created a huge distance between me and my parents, because culturally I'm more American now, but I have all of this backlog of like a time and a place that also doesn't exist anymore, that I also was like really searching for, and actually I ended up finding a community of other artists in Los Angeles who have like this Soviet era nostalgia and like love. And actually Ilona, my friend that just came in, we started a Russian club where all of us were feeling like we had all of these, you know, we didn't want to forget where we came from, and we didn't want to lose our language skills, and we wanted to, but we also like that place where we came from does not exist anymore. I remember meeting like younger artists who came from Moscow, and they just looked at me like I don't know, like some kind of like Soviet babushka that had like this whole other idea of a place that has evolved way beyond, you know, culturally from what I remember it to be.
Individuals perceive the rates of change differently. Katya came over at the age of 11. Her memories of her homeland are frozen at that time, whereas she just talks about encountering artists who came over more recently, and their whole understanding of what they left was different. You know, it's like discovering your grandmother's accent is not what that language sounds like anymore.
Mm-hmm. How did you switch from being trained as a traditional painter, like in traditional Chinese painting, and like having this whole range of training that also encompasses European? How did you shift it to this installation with the unorthodox materials?
Wow.
And in search of your identity and just place here. So maybe you can share that with us.
Okay. Wow, that's a huge question.
I know.
Just to respond to Katya first, I mean, you came at 11. I came was with my own choice. I came to went to school in New York at School of Visual Arts. So it's my choice. And then of course there's a little part of it is because I try to run away from my mother. That's always there. So yeah, both. But definitely I really want to kind of get away from what I know, you know, already, and come to a different place so I can experience life in a freer, from a freer perspective. And so yeah, school is one of my best choice. So my parents provided money and I just went to New York. So from that first year, of course, regarding to my training, I was trained on both Chinese traditional painting and then the Western way of painting, both at the same time. But when I went to SVA, after the first year, of course, this American culture completely influenced me. What I picked up mostly is like that, this DIY culture. Everything you do it yourself. I came from a culture, it's like you worship that scholarly way of life. And so labor is cheap. You don't have to do anything. Anything break, you just call people in to fix it. But here it's different. You have to do everything yourself. Not unless you are rich. But it is that culture, DIY culture, really influenced me. So I started interested in material. I find it fascinating, to experiment with different material from, of course I still draw with paper, but I will add plastic on it and draw on it. So that's completely, on a different level to it. So what else do you ask?
Well, how did you switch to the
yeah.
installation in unorthodox materials?
Right. It's like kind of automatically, for me, painting is almost dead at the point when I was, in the... No, not against your painting, but to me at that time, it's like, how can I paint a different way? For me at the time, almost impossible. So I just switched to material. I find it more fascinating to tinker around with all the different pieces, bending the wire. And of course, my work's very involved with line. So just you just take from the brush to wire, and with crochet or just bending with tool, it's very natural to me. So installation, of course, it become just part of it because three-dimensional is so. It's like working against the gravity. It become more fun than just kind of play and kind of go through things in your head and try to put it on two-dimensional things.
You talk about many things here. There is this resistance to change, first of all. Creating something that's completely new, like Duchamp, you just mentioned. Peter often says to me, when you do the work that does not resonate or reflects on something that already is accepted and in existence, it's very difficult to create a dialogue. So knowing whether the change that's happening and being able to perceive it and recognize as something that will create a shift in the new direction, it's very difficult. So we can think very positively about possibilities of changes. At the same time, we are very conservative, really accepting a change or even being able to perceive it. And Peter opened that, my eyes to that when we had conversations about it.